Hello everyone, my name is Dan Richardson. I'm a research fellow at Action Lab, Monash University. My work is around collaborative systems and local communities, and today I'm going to walk through some of the work me and my lovely co-authors did in 2021 investigating ways that industry practitioners could surface and critically engage with the values embedded into their technology designs. This project took place within the design process of an automated telephone system for use by domestic workers in Dhaka, Bangladesh, designed alongside both an NGO and a gig economy company. Domestic workers are typically hired to cook, clean, do laundry, or even care for the children of a household. There are estimated to be up to 4 million domestic workers in Bangladesh, with the vast majority being women or girls. However, prior to 2015, Bangladeshi domestic workers had few legal protections from abuse and harassment within their places of work. As a part of a wider project, the NGO we were working with aimed to provide domestic workers with skills training for formal job opportunities, to increase their awareness of their rights, and to support the Bangladeshi government's capacity to enforce and monitor the implementation of the new legislation. The NGO chose to partner with a gig economy company, which we will call GigCo, who aim to apply the gig economy model to Dhaka's domestic worker industry. Aiming to be the Uber of domestic workers, they run a service through which customers can request a domestic worker through a smartphone app. However, most domestic workers lack access to smartphones, instead having feature phones, which can only send and receive calls, with text messages typically being of limited use to them due to low literacy rates. As a result, the workers who were unable to access GigCo's digital infrastructure to respond to client work requests. GigCo and the NGO decided to implement an IVR system, a telephone system where workers would receive automated calls and navigate menus through button presses. We offered consultation and advice during the design process of this new system, whilst simultaneously carrying out a design ethnography of the process, to reflect on how the values of the designers were reflected in the design of the IVR system. During this study, we carried out 12 one-hour design workshops with GigCo and representatives from the NGO over the course of 11 months. These took place over 3 stages. First, we held exploratory discussions which aimed to understand each partner's motivations for participating and their intended outcomes for the process. Next, an iterative design stage aimed to develop the design of what we called the IVR system's flow, the menus, information, and options available to the domestic workers as they interact with the system over the phone. GigCo led these sessions, producing and sharing several iterations of the IVR flow in PowerPoint for feedback from us and the NGO. These sessions prompted discussion about what information should be included, excluded, or even prioritized in the system's menus. Finally, GigCo produced an operational prototype of the design, which they dubbed the Human IVR. Rather than being automated, this Wizard of Oz prototype had human operators following algorithmic suggestions and the IVR flow to simulate the final system. Discussions at this stage focused on this prototype's implementation, how it was performing, and what feedback GigCo had received from the domestic workers. Through these discussions, we found that analysing the system's design yielded a number of insights into each stakeholder's priorities and values. For a full, detailed overview of the final system design, we recommend reading the paper, but here is a brief overview from the perspective of the domestic worker. Firstly, the system calls the worker in the morning to find out if they want to work that day, and if so, when. Next, the client requests a worker through the GigCo smartphone app. GigCo's algorithm chooses a suitable worker and rings them to see if they will take the order. If so, the worker is asked to wait while GigCo checks if the order is genuine by calling the client. The worker receives a second confirmation call from the system and, if the job is genuine, is then asked to give an estimated time of arrival and leave towards the client's house. During the journey, the worker is called up to 3 times to get an updated estimated time of arrival. These were dubbed tracking calls, and were used to emulate the use of GPS positioning seen in apps like Uber. When they have reached the client's house, the worker calls the system to say they have arrived. The system reminds the worker not to enter the house if the client hasn't met a number of safety requirements. Once the work is finished, the worker then rings the system again to mark it as complete. After marking the job as complete, the worker waits at the client's house until an automated text message arrives confirming that the client has paid GigCo. At any time, the worker can call the system to get information about a current job or their wages, get help from the GigCo office or emergency services, or to contact the current client, albeit only once. This IVR system enables domestic workers to participate in the gig economy without requiring smartphones, internet access, or any significant level of literacy. However, despite the project's primary goal being the empowerment of the domestic workers, there are a number of design decisions evident which would be detrimental to the workers' experiences when using the system. Despite the NGO and GigCo asserting that an automated system would be objective and impartial, such infrastructures feature embedded biases informed by the values and priorities of those involved in the design process. This means that analysing and querying the design of technological systems can give insights into the designer's priorities, attitudes, and assumptions. As such, querying the choices required during the design of the IVR component reframed them as values levers, informal practices that call attention to designed infrastructure, serving as provocations, effective entry points for value discussions during the process of technology development. In this way, we have been able to gain insights into how the stakeholders' values were embedded within the final system design, through the inclusion, prioritization, and omission of pieces of information and functionality accessible to the workers. Firstly, there are multiple elements within the system's design which suggest that GigCo had low expectations of the workers. For example, the tracking calls were perceived by GigCo to be a necessary inclusion to prompt workers to arrive at clients' houses on time, even after a high success rate during the human IVR deployment where the calls had been removed due to complaints from the workers. GigCo also believed that the workers would be confused if given the ratings of clients when offered work. Furthermore, while clients had access to workers' phone numbers, workers were only able to directly contact the clients once by routing through the IVR system. These low expectations and the unequal provision of information and control contribute towards a final design where the worker has little power, as commonly seen in other gig economy systems. As another example, GigCo are principally a for-profit company, and the system's design reflects their prioritization of clients' interests over those of the workers. This is evident in some fairly benign ways. For example, the worker is called to accept a job before the client is called to confirm it is legitimate, and workers receive automated calls while customers are called by human operators. However, there are other instances with serious potential consequences. For example, GigCo had few concerns related to safety when sharing workers' phone numbers with clients, despite prior literature warning of the possibility of harassment. Among these and other issues, the fact that GigCo's platform is built around a technology that the client has access to but the worker does not, highlights that the system's design focuses on the clients, not the workers. We present these insights as evidence of how values levers can be applied by designers as a simple tool to reveal and reflect upon what values are embedded and prioritized within their designs and processes. While actually engaging with the workers in consultation or even a full co-design process would naturally be a more effective way to ensure a more suitable human-centered final design, these practices are frequently overlooked within commercial settings. We argue that in such cases, some level of critical analysis reflection is better than none, and that values levers are a useful and simple tool for engaging in this space without requiring additional investment or expertise. In this study, many of the values levers we found resulted from decisions that GigCo and the NGO were forced to make due to the limitations of working within the IVR medium. IVR menus are usually prescribed, linear, largely static, and limited in length. Due to these limitations, the choices of what information and functionality is excluded and how included elements are ordered are strong indications of the designer's priorities and their assumptions about the end user. We argue that by forcing these decisions to take place, the process of encountering the constraints and the limitations of the technology became a values lever. While IVR is a perfect medium for forcing these decisions, we expect any constraints could be utilized in this way. Everything from minimum hardware requirements to what elements should be surfaced first in a GUI. As they can be more tightly integrated into the practical stages of development and don't require specialist research practices, we also propose that these decisions-based values levers are likely far more appropriate for many production-focused development environments than traditional methods, such as value-sensitive design. A process which incorporates values levers could even be useful for purposes of accountability and evidencing deliverables, keeping track of the explicit values-based reasoning behind design decisions. In short, we argue that values levers offer opportunities for engagement in critical, values-focused reflection, even in resource-constrained development contexts, and that the use of constraints as values levers should be considered during the production of platforms looking to develop a worker or user-centered perspective.